Oh, well, hey guys, All Blacks versus Springboks. Just let me get my breath back because that was one cracker of a game. Firstly, in this video, I'm going to cover off some key talking points in the first and second half that were pretty defining for the result of the match. And then I'll cover a couple of talking points at the end. A few key areas that were critical in the result of the game and a few key players at the end. And then ultimately, finally, where to from here for both teams. Look, the first half of the match, a pretty good start by the Springboks. They certainly defended really, really well in that first 20 minutes. And, there's a couple of plays there that just weren't executed anywhere near accurately enough by the All Blacks. Early yellow card to Jasper Wiese, and then a couple of minutes later, a pretty silly yellow card to Sevu Reece. Yeah, he should have been better than that, but ultimately the key talking points of the first half was, firstly, the All Blacks. They had at least 2 or 3 chances, and ultimately every time they're building some pressure, they'd try a 50-50 offload, or there'd be a turnover, or they just couldn't seem to execute their attacking plays, and apply the pressure that they needed to break down the Springboks. The Springboks did defend really, really well, but they needed to be better. And ultimately, the Springboks were probably a little bit similar. Like they certainly had a couple of attacking chances there, but they just a few drop balls and they just couldn't quite execute in the first half. Particularly that one, Cheslin Colby just cut the All Blacks open, and certainly that try-saving tackle by Sam Cane right round the ankles. If that hadn't have been made by Sam Cane, I think that would have been a try to Cheslin Colby. But ultimately, Cheslin Colby again did an offload to Peter Steph du Toit, who knocked the ball on. So, summed up the first half, the All Blacks winning the first half 9 points to 3. At that point, guys, and let me know your thoughts, how you felt after the first half. But in questioning now, every time the game gets close between the All Blacks and Springboks, it's like they have a mental edge over the All Blacks. Yeah, and basically at that scoreline at half-time, I just thought, look, the All Blacks are going to need to score 2, 3, 4 tries in the second half, or they're not going to win this tight match. And look, ultimately that second half, the Springboks came back really well, didn't they? Look, there was they got on attack, they executed some really good short balls and pick and goes, and then a very well executed try to Sia Khaleesi to get them back in the match. Yeah, ultimately on attack, I think it's fair to say the Springboks executed their attacking plays much better than the All Blacks. They know their DNA, they're accurate, and they apply pressure, and then when the chances are there, they take their chances, which the All Blacks didn't do. And then again, the All Blacks had a number of chances, a couple of chances in the second half that they just weren't able to execute. Very good defensive pressure by the Springboks, but again, the All Blacks they're building up some pressure, and then they'd do a 50-50 offload, or someone would knock it on, or there'd be a turnover. So, they just didn't execute well enough tonight, did they? So, and then a couple of strange yellow cards, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. It was good that ultimately this didn't decide the result. If the All Blacks had won by 3 points, and ultimately Willie le Roux with his yellow card, it would probably left a bad taste in my mouth. But that yellow card to Willie le Roux was a bit strange, guys, I thought, and certainly so close to having an intercept try from it. But so you question the rules of the game there. But anyway, it was called, and then a pretty sloppy yellow card to Tyrell Lomax. But the All Blacks not handling the pressure when they need to. Congratulations to the Springboks, 18 points to 12, a good victory to them. But look, ultimately the key talking points for me are firstly the coaches, and look, Russie versus Razor, I'm going to raise those key matchups really in the game and the series really. So firstly, you look at Russie, the absolute genius of coaching in the world at the moment. And last week he brings in some young talent to the Springboks, Sasha, etc. And ultimately, you blood some young players, but their game is executed. They apply some pressure in the last 20 minutes, and ultimately the Springboks win at Ellis Park, blooding some new players. You look at Razor, and before this game, I really questioned some of his selections, particularly Cortez Ratama and Wallace Satiti. I think it's fair to say Razor got those selections right. Look, Wallace Satiti, he played really well, didn't he, guys? Look, his ball carries, his work at the breakdown, his work in the line out, and particularly a number of clean breaks he made. Very, very good performance by Wallace Atiti in the game. Cortez Ratam was also very good, and a lot of pressure applied on him by the Springboks, but he executed his passes well, and he did the basics really well. He kicked it well. Both of them played well with Razor's selections, but where I think Razor didn't get it right was Tyrell Lomax. He just looked tired at the end, and particularly there's that scrum penalty by the Springboks against him. And then later on, Tyrell Lomax, a big man marking, with fatigue, marking Cheslin Colby, and ultimately under pressure like that and fatigue, he puts his shoulder into Cheslin Colby because he's looking at making sure he's going to tackle him, and ultimately yellow card against the All Blacks, which was an absolutely key moment in the match. So I question there with Razor, why didn't he bring Fletcher Newell on much earlier? Especially when you could see Tyrell Lomax was fatiguing. Ultimately that had a massive impact on the game, and it's the difference between Rusty and Razor at the moment with coaching. Second major talking point is the execution of the teams. You look at the Springboks, they had 2 chances, a simple, well-executed try to Sia Khaleesi. They built pressure, they applied phases, and when they had the opportunity, Sia Khaleesi broke the line and scored a good try. Conversely, you look at the All Blacks and, guys, let me know your thoughts on this, but I'm personally starting to scratch my head with this. We just seem to hear the same thing from them. Oh, the execution's not there. The execution's not there. Well, why is the execution not there, guys? And again, the frustrating thing is, this has been from the England series, it wasn't there. It wasn't there in the first test against Argentina. It hasn't been there against the Springboks. This is not test 1 or 2. This is, we're nearly halfway through the rugby season, guys. So, but for me, I personally just feel like the All Blacks are trying to play Super Rugby. They're applying pressure and they're getting to, around 6 to 8 phases of pressure, good attacking play. And at Super Rugby level, where the defence is nowhere near international level, being honest, that often results in tries to the Hurricanes, Chiefs or Blues, right? But international level is different. So I just feel like when they're executing their plays, they're building, phases, but they're not applying that pressure with consistent enough phases and consistent pressure to then really pull the throttle and go for the jugular and execute a play. At international level, particularly against the Springboks, the All Blacks needed to have 15, 20, 25 phases of accurate play against them to break them. Guys, I think if they had have done that, the attack was there, but there just wasn't the execution and the persistence on attack. I think if they had have put 20, 25 phases in a couple of times with some of the execution, I think there would have at least been a couple of tries by the All Blacks, and the game could have been much different. So, honestly, I scratch my head, though, and you go back to the drawing board, and I hope they fix this for the Northern Tour, guys. Another point, I think the Springboks, they well dominated the aerial battle tonight, didn't they? Particularly, I think Handré Pollard's kicking was much more contestable. It was much higher but shorter, and so the Springboks were able to contest it much more effectively, and ultimately the All Blacks back 3 just didn't seem to have an answer. So maybe there's some selection queries there, particularly last week. Caleb Clark was brilliant aerially, and ultimately the All Blacks are so much better aerially, having some tall players that are better in the air. So ask some questions about some of these All Blacks, particularly like the likes of Sevu Reece, a shorter winger, very dynamic and explosive, but, ask some questions about them aerially. Where to from here for both teams? Firstly, to the Springboks, they're playing so well, aren't they, guys? They know their DNA. A number of trophies this year for them already, isn't it? The Freedom Cup since 2009. It looks like they'll probably beat the Argentinian side in both those tests and win the Rugby Championship. And ultimately, they've now beaten the All Blacks 4 times in a row, the first time since 1949. So, look, they've got the edge over the All Blacks at the moment. I think that's fair to say. But I think what they're doing so well is they're just executing the basics so well. When the Springboks get their chances, particularly that try by Sia Khaleesi, they apply pressure, and they just keep that pressure on and then they put the throttle down and score points. And ultimately, that's one of the reasons why they're so hard to beat at the moment. So the Springboks are the world champions, and they're certainly a very tough side to beat for any international side at the moment anyway. For the All Blacks, again, they go back to the drawing board, and particularly, I think the main concern there is their attack execution. And guys, again, let me know your thoughts on what on earth is going wrong with their execution there. I just don't think that they have the patience on attack like they need to at the moment. I think they should be applying much more pressure, fatiguing that defence, building more phases, and then going for the jugular. You know, start applying 15, 20, 25 phases of brutal attack. If there's nothing going on, they get hit over the advantage line, you know, don't panic. Just keep building more phases and then go for the jugular. But I think when they get hit over the advantage line or the pressure comes on them, they're trying for the 50-50s, which doesn't work at international level, and it isn't working for them at the moment. So ultimately, some real concerns around their attack execution, guys, and you've got to ask some questions, particularly that Northern Tour, Ireland, England, France. You know, the line speed's coming. They're good defensive sides, and if the All Blacks can't figure something out for their execution, you know, those tests are going to be brutally tough and concerning for the All Blacks. I think that the final thing is you've got to ask some questions about how they're handling pressure, particularly, you know, not just both tests against the Springboks, but the Argentinian test. When the pressure comes on, they're not handling it as well as they need to at test match level. You know, we simply can't say this is the young players not handling the pressure. You know, you look at both those Springbok tests. You know, Ofa Tungafasi and Tyrell Lomax are not inexperienced rugby players, and, you know, yellow cards to them, not handling the pressure, not handling the fatigue on the big stage, and ultimately very costly yellow cards against the All Blacks. So some questions to ask there. Guys, let me know your thoughts on the match anyway. Guys, let me know your thoughts where the Springboks won the game. Who are their standout players for the Springboks? Guys, let me know your thoughts on where you think the All Blacks need to be much, much better. You know, let me know your thoughts on who played well for the All Blacks and who needs to take a real hard look at themselves, and ultimately let me know your thoughts on what the All Blacks need to do quite quickly to turn this poor run of form around. So, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and add any further comments you thought about this match. Absolute blockbuster, Cape Town, beautiful city. Let's end this video so I can get my breath back. Cheers.